You get me, get you. You get me, feel it, you. You get me, get you. You get me, feel it, you. You get me, get you. You get me.
Welcome to Talking Politics and Religion Without Killing Each Other. I am your host, Corey Nathan. It is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group, a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. And it was very cool to be with my colleagues from the Democracy Group in DC just a couple of weeks ago. Really, really cool. Today, I am just going to jump right into it. What I want to talk about today is two ways to shut down dialogue before it even starts. Two ways, because it's been happening a lot in an increasing basis. One way is ad hominem attacks as a means to vilify someone. And two is what I call turning people into proxies, So I want to talk a little bit about examples of both of these. And in some cases, they're doing both at the same time. Ad hominem attacks, like a personal attack as a means to vilify someone, and then turning people into proxies. So having an individual as a representative of a whole group. So one example was, for whatever reason, we posted this video a few weeks ago. It was the conversation I had with my friend Lisa Willie Knierim, a girl I graduated high school with in New Jersey. She's still in New Jersey. She serves as mayor now of Cranberry Township, New Jersey. And we posted it several weeks ago, but this is why I say all of a sudden we started getting comments on it, and now it's like boom, 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 like all kinds of comments. And I think it's because one person discovered it, and it's their maybe area of expertise or their particular passion or something. I'm not sure. But then all of a sudden we started getting some other comments. So just to recap, Lisa shares firsthand experience witnessing top-down national politics, as she puts it, slowly making their way into the temperature of local government. Even in her, Cranberry is a small town. It's not where we grew up, about a half hour away in Manalapan, Freehold area. But the town where she's mayor only has 4,200 residents. And she was just expressing how surprising it is. The way that she put it is the partisan nature of conversations have gotten down to small town politics, where neighbors just talking to neighbors find themselves getting defensive and mimicking what they're seeing on whatever podcast they're listening to or whatever firebrands they're watching on TV. I think she put it really well. The national level of cruelty, the lack of kindness, the lack of grace, the lack of civility, which in these comments, people then illustrated exactly the point that she was making. Not everyone. So let me just give you an example. The YouTube comments on this, and you can go to our YouTube page and watch the video, read these comments, maybe participate in these comments and exhibit a better way to do this, because there are some decent points, I think, underneath the what's kind of inhibiting someone like me. I don't have a stake in this, other than Mayor Lisa is my friend. But I don't have a stake in this. My stake is I want to have these conversations in healthier, more productive ways. So I'll give you one good example. One of the comments, a fella said, "Save the family farm. I am a Democrat who is a never Trumper. We need to save family farms. Family farms are important for independence." So they were picking up on just one of the things that Lisa, as a mayor of Cranberry, is dealing with. He followed up the same commenter. He followed up by saying, "I watched this whole thing overall. I thought you guys did well, but please remember, family farms are important to our overall community. If we keep building, we will lose what is precious to us." So this is someone who's stating an objection to a position that Lisa is taking. It sounds like I don't know the specific details of it, but he's stating an objection to it. Now, the way he's stating it is in a winsome, neighborly way. I am much more inclined to, if I were also in that community and I were affected in any way by this policy or what's happening here, I'd be much more inclined to listen to this individual, dig into it, and see if there's some compromise, or perhaps I can be persuaded by this individual's objection if I were the mayor, or even if I was just another resident of Cranberry, New Jersey. Now, there were several other comments. One started with, "Happy to talk to you one-on-one," in quotes. Happy to talk to you. This commenter was quoting something that Lisa said. Happy to talk to you one-on-one isn't good enough, lady. That's the first thing she said. Guess what? I am no longer interested in anything else you have to say. If you have, you could have like the most erudite, informed policy positions, but once you start that way, I could give a shit what you have to say. Happy to talk to you one-on-one isn't good enough, lady. Okay, now basically just get the rest of what you have to say off your chest. You know, if it's a written comment, I'm not reading it. TLDR. No matter how short or brief or intelligent sounding it might be after that, once you start that way, go fuck yourself. You know, bottom line, I'm not interested. You just put me on the defensive. I don't even have it, like I said, I don't even have a stake in this thing, but I no longer have any interest in anything else that you have to say. Happy to talk to you one-on-one isn't good enough, lady. All right, good. You got it off your chest. Now go fuck yourself and move on. Another comment. This is a person who I guess is some sort of an activist or something like that. And one of the things that she said was bending the knee to builders while painting herself a public servant as a victim of public dissent. You know, and then she was basically mocking Lisa. She was basically mocking this person who came on a national program like TP and like this one, and sharing her views and trying to call for civility. You know, she said, "Hey, let's have the conversation." That's what she's calling for. Let's have the conversation. And what does this person do? An informed activist, clearly someone who's, if you go to her profile, clearly someone who is involved in these issues all over the country. But let me fucking tell you something. Sorry, I know I'm getting my ire up, and I already got my. My 18 and over rating for, because this just pisses me off. More than any particular issue, what pisses me off is you're painting Lisa, you're painting a person out to be some demonic force, and you're approaching her in a vilifying way. Again, I have no interest in anything else you have to say, no matter how informed you might be. It doesn't matter if you approach it that way. You have just put everyone else on the defensive, and you've created an either or, a friend enemy. We're the good ones and they're the evil ones, kind of a dynamic here. And now you're forcing me as an outside observer to choose one side or the other. And because you've approached it this way, and you're painting someone I know personally, and even if I didn't know Lisa, but I have no interest in anything else that you have to say, no matter how substantive it might be, no matter how good of a point it might be. I don't care what you have to say. You're coming from a place of moral superiority, wagging your finger at someone and going a step further to paint this person as if they're a vile creature. I don't care. I don't care. That's not the way to go about it. Vilifying someone by way of ad hominem attacks is not a productive way to go about it. Pretending to be on some sort of a moral high ground and painting others who have any sort of 1 degree of difference from you as if they're evil and vile and the enemy and to be shamed. This hasn't been working, and it's not going to work. So try another way. Try a way of treating someone with a little bit of good faith, with treating someone as if they're your actual neighbor, entering into a conversation with good faith and goodwill, as opposed to painting them as if they're some, evil enemy of all that is good. So there's a couple of good ways to go about this and a lot of bad ways to go about it. And we've seen both illustrated just in this issue for a town of 4,200. So you can, I don't know. You might not be persuaded because of the way I'm going about this, but you fucking pissed me off by the way you went about it. Plus the fact that Lisa's my friend, and now you're attacking her. Now I do have a dog in the race. Happy to talk to you one-on-one isn't good enough, lady. Yeah, again, anything else that you might have had to say. So you know what? If you were my kid, because you're acting like a freaking 3-year-old, I would say, okay, dear, here's what we do. You're going to go back and you're going to try again. And you're going to do this in a more productive adult way, because these are our neighbors. You might not know them. You might even disagree with them. That's okay. We can disagree, but we can disagree in a winsome, neighborly way and give people a sense of good faith and goodwill. Okay, that's one. The second way that we can shut down conversations before we get into any productive dialogue like I said, is people are people, not proxies. Now, we saw a little bit of this, the assumption that someone falls into a binary category that you automatically assume is your absolute adversary, your life and death struggle adversary. No, people are people, not proxies. And they're all made up of a lot of complexities, a lot of depth, a lot of nuance. So when we enter into these conversations, let's give people the benefit of the doubt that they're actually individual human beings, not proxies for some group that you've now identified as the enemy. I'll give you another example. I have been posting about, I've just been quoting from the Constitution. I do this with the Bible, I do it with the Constitution. So sometimes you'll see me on different platforms that we're on. In this case, it was Facebook. I just quoted a passage from the Constitution. I forgot which part it was. It might have just been something about birthright, the issue of birthright citizenship. It might have been something about the Congress's Article 1 powers of appropriation, the power of the purse, as they call it. It might have been any number of things where I'll just quote like one clause from whether it's one of the articles or one of the amendments, and a lot of times it's related to something in the news. Anyway, I did this, and there was a long conversation, a discussion underneath the comment. People had strong opinions because they knew, maybe a lot of folks knew what that particular clause was in reference to in terms of current events and what was happening in the news. Now, one of my buddies he happens to be from the entertainment industry that I have some business in, and I've known him for a long time. He's engaging with somebody else that I knew. I think this fellow was somebody that my kids went to school with when they were in the Christian school together. Is that where? No. I think that fellow goes back to my kids' nursery school. Christian dude, so I knew him in completely different circles. So, and he hasn't stated that he voted for Trump, but it's clear that he's at least supportive of a lot of the policies that are coming out of the Trump administration. But the other fella from entertainment world, I think he's a writer off the top of my head. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Two different worlds. They obviously come at it from two different, very different points of view politically. They don't know each other. And then, listen, it started going off the rails. I do have to say that my buddy, who's a writer, who I'm pretty sure he would identify himself as politically liberal or progressive, he started saying things like, kind of attacking my other buddy and saying, "You're felon," referring to Trump, "You're felon, you're hero," like talking to the buddy who is supportive of Trump's policies or the Trump administration's policies, "You're felon, you're hero," and then saying, "You're corrupt AG," like assigning Pam Bondi and assigning Trump and putting that onto him. He might support specific policies. He might have even voted for these people. But then to conflate the character and the actions and the words of Donald Trump with this individual, I think is a mistake. Whether this guy would support his words, actions, and character, let him account for that, right? But he's making it personal, and he's lumping. He's doing that because he's making this guy the proxy of everyone who might have voted for Trump or everyone who supports any policies that's coming out of the Trump administration. And then he goes further. He uses a term maggot, MAGA for MAGA, TS, maggots. It's like calling him a name. And then he even goes and says, "You knuckle draggers." Now, I have tried to curate these conversations so that when it's on one of my platforms, I've tried to curate these conversations that people talk to each other in a more, again, a neighborly way, a winsome way, an engaging way, giving people the benefit of the doubt. Right. So I just bring this up not to put this guy in a corner or paint him in a bad way, but to say like this is not a good way to engage someone. And frankly, it's not persuasive. What it does is, for my friend who does support some of the policies coming out of Trump and the Trump administration, do you think it's going to be persuasive? Do you think he's going to see this name calling, "You maggots, you're a hero, you're corrupt AG, you knuckle draggers"? Do you think he's going to wake up and be, "Oh man, I'm a knuckle dragger, I'm a maggot. Oh wow, I better change my opinion and I better support the policies from the other side"? No, it's just going to force this guy to get more pissed off at those people, at the people who are calling him names, at the people who are calling his, attacking his beliefs, right? And it's only going to make him dig his heels in that much more and raise the temperature on the adversarial, the contentious nature of these types of debates. There's a better way to do this. There's something that's a little bit more subtle now. It's related. I'm talking about people are people, not proxies. So I was having a conversation at our favorite local dive with a really, really close friend of mine. And we got into politics, and he started just going, you guys, and he was talking about liberals and progressives. And first of all, you start with you guys and then associate me with one party or the other. And frankly, it triggers me because, listen, I am truly an independent, right? I can't state this enough. And if I was a Democrat, I wouldn't apologize for it. I think there are valid reasons for being a Democrat. If I was it's harder for me personally to support Trump, but that's not because I'm not a conservative. I'm actually a conservative. Look up Jack Kemp in recent history, a Paul Ryan type conservative, or if you want to go further back in philosophy, a Edmund Burke type conservative. That's the type of, or G.K. Chesterton type conservative. That's a type of conservatism that I philosophically align with more often than not. So, my buddy got me on the defensive right out of the gate because he's saying you guys, because he knows I didn't vote for Trump, and then assumed, like by implication, is indicating that I'm one of those guys, meaning progressives, liberals, Marxists, Democrats, rats, right? So, and he knows me well enough to know my nuanced perspectives. So he's automatically putting me on the defensive. Maybe he's doing it on purpose to get under my skin, to, piss me off, because we do have fun pissing each other off in a fun, loving way. So he starts out that way, but he's putting me on the defensive by mischaracterizing me, lumping me in with this larger group. And again, if I was part of that group, if I was a philosophical liberal or progressive, I wouldn't apologize for it. But it's a mischaracterization of what my actual views are. So that's the other thing. When you're labeling people for them, usually you're wrong. Okay? Usually you're wrong. Let them, if I want to label myself, that's fine. It even comes with other categories. When somebody says I'm a white guy, you know what I think? I'm Jewish. I'm a Christian now, and I'm still Jewish. I grew up going to an Orthodox synagogue. And you know what I think? I think of what Anne Frank's father said when he said that he used the German equivalent term for white. I was white enough to be recruited for the Kaiser's army in World War I, but I wasn't white enough to save my family from being eviscerated in World War II. So even when it comes to something like that, maybe it's just my Jewish heritage and my Jewish identity that I am very, very dubious when someone labels me anything. The one thing I will say, you want to label me a Mets fan? Okay, I'm a diehard Mets fan. Other than that, be very careful about not just labeling me, but labeling anybody. Let them label themselves. Better yet, let them define themselves. And not just generally speaking, but specifically speaking. That allows for a much more dynamic conversation. And that allows for human connection. And better yet, not just define what their position is, but let them tell you a story. How did they arrive at that position? I hope all of this makes sense. I know my temperature is up because I'm reacting to a few of these things. But I hope that some of this makes sense. Now, let me get into a little bit of solutions. I'm describing the problems. I'm describing, frankly, what's bothering me. Okay, this is bothering me, but it's a larger problem in the way that we all talk to each other. So I'm hoping that some of this is helpful to contextualize how we can do this better. So how can we do this better? One is, I do this all the time. I have conversations with people in person, at Bible studies. I have conversations at my, local, the local pub. I online. So I do this all. But most folks don't really get to do this. Most folks don't poke their heads out of their particular bunker or bubble, their epistemic, philosophical, political bubble. They're just hearing from their favorite pundits on TV or their favorite, podcasters, or reading their favorite go-to websites or whatever. And then if they are talking to someone, it's only someone that is affirming and confirming their biases, right? So they're staying within a political bubble. So keep your expectations realistic. And when you do engage with somebody that has different opinions from you, instead of thinking you could convert them completely in one conversation, my My approach is I might start with the equivalent of a few vocabulary words, right? When you're learning a brand new language, when you're opening someone else to the concept that not all liberals, not all of the left, first of all, not everybody's the left who you are assigning that label, but not everybody on the left thinks. And I'm trying to kind of open someone's what is that word? Open someone's paradigm, change someone's paradigm. You might want to start. It's like learning a whole new language. So you might want to start with a few vocabulary words instead of trying to teach them le petit prince and read the whole thing in the original French in one sitting. That's not something that can be achieved, but they can learn the equivalent of a few new vocabulary, a few key vocabulary words. Again, it's the concept I brought up before in terms of degrees. Instead of trying to change somebody 180 degrees in one conversation, maybe try to change them by 1 degree. And be open to the possibility that you'll be persuaded by 1 degree. You'll learn a new vocabulary, the equivalent of a few key vocabulary words, as opposed to going at it and starting to pound heads and calling them names right out of the gate. I have no interest in what you have to say, like I said earlier, but go at it where it's a dialogue, it's a conversation, right? And you're open to persuading each other. You're two human beings. I'm not a proxy for all gray-haired people. I'm not a proxy for even all Mets fans, but I am me. I'm just me. So how do we do this better? There's a few ways. There's passive ways, defensive ways, and there are proactive strategies of going about it. So the passive way, so one passive way, if somebody opens out with name calling and vilifying, I might just, whether I can actually mute them, I'm doing a lot less of that. I'm letting those comments stand, like I shared a few weeks ago. I'm letting a lot of those comments stand. But mentally, for me, I'm basically muting them, right? I like they are the equivalent of, again, a 3-year-old that's just having a temper tantrum. And my opinion is a lot of times let the kid cry it out. They're having a temper tantrum. I'm not going to affirm that that's an effective way to get my attention or be even remotely persuasive by acknowledging that or trying to fight with them or, have a temper tantrum next to them. Reminds me of a story in baseball. A manager of one of the teams sees a call he didn't like from an umpire, and he comes out and he's yelling and he's screaming and he's kicking dirt and he's turns the hat backwards and the spit's flying and he's going at it until he finally he wears himself out and he passes out. He's on the ground. And he thinks, oh man, I went at him really hard. I probably won this argument, only to turn his head, open his eyes, look over and see the umpire just laid down right next to him. He's like, I'm done too. He's laying down right next to him. He's like, yeah, that didn't work. Let's just take a little break in the sun together. But yeah, so temper tantrums don't work. So just mute them. Or you could. It's like in meditation. There's this practice of noting. A thought enters in that you acknowledge the thought with curiosity. Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting thought. So that you can separate yourself from the thought. The thought doesn't absorb you. It isn't you. It's just a separate entity. You can acknowledge it with some curiosity and allow it to move on. So that's another way. It's one step beyond just muting them. Acknowledge a thought, let it move on, let it pass. But it doesn't. Something that is contentious, something that comes out basically name calling or something along those lines, it really doesn't deserve deeper engagement than just, oh, okay, thanks for your thoughts, and then move on. Or in the case of my buddy that I was at the local pub with, that was you guys, and he was basically criticizing everything he is blaming Democrats for: open borders, higher taxes, getting nothing done, too much regulation, and everything. And all of those things have merit in terms of if we wanted to talk about those issues generally or get into specific policies more specifically, there's a lot of meaty conversation to be had there. But he was just going, bullet pointing one thing after another, and you guys and you Dems and it was just it wasn't productive. So at a certain point, I was like, dude, are you just getting this off your chest? Because if so, I'm here for you, man. Understand that you're not talking to me. You're not, because this isn't apropos to what my positions are. So understand that. You're not talking to Dems. You're not talking to them. You're not talking to all progressive. You're talking to me. This is me. So understand that. But if you just want to, if you're frustrated, you want to get it off your chest, you want to blow off some steam, fine. I'm here for you, buddy. I'm here. Do it. Let's, have another round. Yeah, get another beer. And then we'll call it a day. So those are a few ways, a more passive way of dealing with people who are name calling or who are treating you as a proxy and not a person, right? There are more defensive ways of doing it. What I mean by defensive is I can say flat out, like when my buddy was talking about Dems and all the things that he disagreed with that Dems are doing, I will simply say, listen, I will not defend positions that I don't hold, because I think a lot of times folks are. Maybe it's because a lot of folks do listen to the podcasts or AM radio for 35 years now, and when they get a live person in front of them, or even if it is online, they're almost expecting a lib to engage with them in this case, or they're expecting a maggot to engage with them. So they're with stating more often than not, what they're doing is they're regurgitating some talking points from their favorite pundit, right? But then because there's an actual human being in front of them, instead of maybe at most being a caller with a comment into a radio show, they're expecting a response from that person as if they're the proxy of that group that they're attacking. So then you're perfectly within your rights to do what they're not expecting, which is like, I don't actually have that position, so I don't feel any need to defend a position that I don't have. Or if you do have that a position that they're talking about, you can like kind of separate it out. You can separate the wheat from the chaff. Like, hey, listen, I don't know about X, Y, and Z, but you said something that's really interesting, and I'd like to respond to that. So you can do it. That's not quite defensive, but more often than not, it's like, dude, I don't know what. Like, you're clearly frustrated about a lot of this stuff. I don't know if you're assuming that those are my positions, but I am not going to defend a position or feel any need to apologize for all these policies. It's like, I don't know, a lot of times when I've pointed out the just anti-moral behavior of Donald Trump on a daily basis, a lot of times I'll get a typical like, well, what about Hunter Biden? I'm like, what about Hunter Biden? Like, I can promise you I will never vote for Hunter Biden. Like, what do you want me to say? What about? I don't know. What about Donald Duck? Like, this doesn't apply to me, and I'm thoroughly uninterested in it. So I'm not going to defend positions I don't hold. You can also clarify what your actual positions are. And a lot of times when somebody gives you that space to clarify what your actual positions are, you'll find that person and you will find that there's a lot more overlap. Just like I've talked about this before, when Joe Walsh and Fred Guttenberg came on the program, that's how they became such good friends, is that they were it wasn't that they agreed on the same policies. What they agreed on was the same values, a lot of the same values. And that's where there's fruitful conversation. That's where democracy can actually happen. So there are passive ways to do this better. There are defensive ways to do this better. And there are proactive ways to do this better. So we've talked about this a lot when David Brooks came on the program, when Monty Guzman has come on the program a couple times. There are great questions. John Roush has brought this up as well. There are great questions that open someone up to who they are and what their story is. Well, what's been your experience? That clearly is something that you're really passionate about. Why is that? Tell me about that. Tell me more. There are great human opening questions that open me up to see the human being underneath the position, underneath the fiery brimstone, the yelling, right? And then it becomes a human connection, right? Another proactive way, if I want to have a different perspective that I'm introducing to this person. Speaking of Jonathan Rauch, he was a very early activist, at least as far back as the early to mid 90s, in trying to get gay marriage legal throughout the country, right? And one of his most effective ways of doing that was by humanizing the issue. So when folks who were very much against the idea of gay marriage being legalized, being instituted as a right, when that person thinks of someone they know who's gay, it changes the whole issue. Then it becomes if it's their favorite nephew, if it's their sister, if it's somebody that they know, somebody that they work with that they really admire and respect, then it's not just an issue. It's not in theory. It's a human thing, right? Again, we're constantly. I keep on coming back to this: the humanity of it all. I was having a conversation. I think I might have shared this with a friend who's a pastor here in town, and uh, we got into politics, and he was really, really almost obsessed with like how the issue of transgender athletes and men playing in women's sports, and he was really it was like a hang up for him. I'm like, listen, dude. I say dude, not dismissively or disrespectfully, but because I don't want to say his name. But anyway, we were having lunch, and I said, listen, pastor friend, um, you realize that your church, there are tragically more instances of people who have either attempted to commit suicide or have actually done it than men playing women's sports in the entire state of California, statistically speaking. And this is probably, and I know a lot of people in that church, and I can tell you that there's severe bouts of mental, of depression, and suicidal ideations. It's tragic. It's tragic. But the numbers will tell you, and I know personally a number of those families that this is indeed the case. There are more instances, and it's tragic, of people in his church where anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 people come on the weekend, on any given weekend, that have either attempted suicide or have tragically committed suicide in his church. Then the entire number of people in the entire state of California of instances of men playing women's sports or transgender women playing in women's sports in high school, if not the entire country. So maybe that wasn't the best way to approach it because it put my friend on the defensive. But the better way for me to do it, I think, in that instance, was to do what John Roush did in his long activism in getting gay marriage legal, in being a part of that long fight, and that is to humanize it. Hey, is to say, Pastor, do you know anybody who's transgender? Have you ever had a conversation with a transgender person? And then start to make those, again, human connections. And then finally, in terms of proactivity, I can ask permission before I just kind of start throwing up on them all of my views. I can ask them, hey, would you be interested to know what my views on that actually are? And so get them to give you admission into this conversation. Get them to give you permission to enter into this conversation. So there's just a few ways: passive ways, defensive ways, and proactive ways. So I know it seems like I covered a lot. It seems like I was coming at it, at a boiling point, because it really, I am very passionate about this, as you can see. But again, just to sum up, there are two ways that you can be sure to shut down a conversation before it even gets started. Two ways to shut down dialogue: ad hominem attacks as a means of vilification and turning people into proxies. So people are not people. Excuse me. People are individual human beings. They're not proxies for entire groups. And the solutions can be passive, can be defensive, or they can be proactive, which is usually the best way. So I hope this was helpful. If nothing else, maybe entertaining to see me get all ticked off and throwing F-bombs around. As always, if you dig what we're doing here, remember to follow the show, write that review, and now you can watch these conversations on YouTube and support us on Patreon. It's youtube.com/@politicsendreligion. And I am at Corey S. Nathan on all the socials, at COREY, S as in Sam, NATHAN, at Corey S. Nathan. We have links in all the show notes. So you can, it's real, all that stuff, YouTube, my, where I am on social media. It's all really easy to find. The links are in the show notes. Listen, your support really does make a difference. Whatever you do, whether it's leaving a comment, leaving us a review, following us on Substack or anywhere else. So sincerely, thank you for all of it. Now, go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect, and have a great week.